Hello and a very warm welcome to all of you participating online, and a warm welcome to my guests on the stage with me, Niccolò del Porto, and another guest is going to be joining us also online, Pietro Adorni. Thank you all for being here. We're really happy that you participated, even though it's online now. Hello, Pietro. I can see you now. So before we begin with this workshop, or rather a discussion, it will be a European connection in climate protection. I would like to ask you a few questions, all of our participants, to see where you're from. So I would kindly ask Yasmin to put on the first Slido survey. So please let us know where you're joining from. A nice word cloud should appear. You have this QR code, or you can use the hashtag 847088. So let us see where you're joining us from. Niccolò here came from?
Italy.
Italy. We have Pietro in Italy. And we're here in Stuttgart. So let us see where our participants joining us from all over Europe. I hope that the results will show a nice map, a nice distribution. Oh, we have a participant from Ecuador even. Wow. So not only a European connection, but even an international connection. Great. But most of our participants are from Stuttgart. Can you see it too, Niccolò?
Absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. No, it's getting a bit too small for me to read. Where are we? In Spain, Italy, and Freiburg, Germany. Great.
Poland?
Poland is also there. Great. Wonderful. Thank you very much. I have a next question for you. In one word, what would you say, what brought you here today? What's your motivation for participating in this ClimateCoAction Summit? What is your motivation? While our participants answer, if you can please show the next survey, Yasmin. Thank you very much. Maybe while we wait for the answers, you can tell me why you're here with us, Niccolò.
Well, I'm basically here because I really care about nature, and I think that's something that has been said by many people, fortunately, because this means that there is a lot of momentum around the issues that our century is facing, we are facing as a species. And so I try to give my little contribution to the cause and trying to spreading some awareness around some topics that I will talk about in a while. And also to see some replies from the people, to see also why people attending today are interested in the topic, and try to collaborate and create a little bit of a discussion with them, possibly.
Okay, thank you. And now we can also see some answers here. The biggest part, or most of you said just interest. You're interested in the topic. And what else can you see? To network is one of the answers here, if I can see it correctly.
Hope.
And hope, that's a beautiful word. Great, thank you so much. And now that we see those answers and thinking about who we are participating here, when it comes to climate connection, to climate protection, what would you say? What's your, let's say, category? What category would you fit in? So we have a third question. It's a multiple choice question, actually. So what category would you say you fit in? Are you an activist, or just a beginner, or just somebody interested? Oh, great. That's a great distribution we're getting here. A lot of you are professionals, even 40% professionals. Yeah. It's still developing. No, now it's 30%. And now it's an equal distribution between activists, beginners, and people simply interested. Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. So we can go on with a short introduction into this topic. When we thought about European connection in climate protection, we said, I come to think of this quote, "No man is an island." Actually, some regions are really islands, literally speaking, but this quote from a poem, it says that whatever we do, it comes back to us. So we're never kind of separated from nature, which is also something that I think Niccolò will be talking about later. And we especially want to see how you can connect and contribute to nature and to climate protection in terms of connecting with others. When I think about this, I remembered an artist, an Italian artist, Valerio Vincenzo, who had a great project photographing borders throughout Europe, former borders. And these are the points where the dots you can see are the points where he went to and took those photos along the borders or former borders of Europe. And he did so wanting to show with a different goal actually, but we can also come back to climate when we see those images. Maybe another image. So this is a former border, for example, between Sweden and Finland, where there is no border anymore. Valerio Vincenzo's goal was to show that there is now peace and that borders can even look like this and not be walls anymore. And especially when it comes to nature, you can see that nature knows no borders, especially water and air, they're always just connected. And this is why cross-regional or international cooperation, especially when it comes to climate protection, is a necessity. And this is what I want to talk about with my guests and with all of you participants, and hope that we can maybe come out with new networks from this. So with me on the stage is Niccolò Del Porto from Italy, he already said. Maybe you can just shortly introduce yourself, Niccolò.
Yeah. Well, I'm a student at the University of Milan. I'm currently studying in an LLM in Law and Sustainable Development. I'm focusing on environmental law and policy, and that's why I also joined an association I'm working for, which is Advocacy Youth. What we basically do is we are an action team of young professionals and students in the field, in the legal field, especially in the field of the rights of nature, which is this jurisprudence that we are trying to establish in the legal context, especially in the international legal context, and we try to operate in the fields of education, policy, and legal practice.
Thank you very much, Niccolò. And we have Pietro Adorni, also from Italy. It's just a coincidence that we have two Italians and an Italian artist, a photographer. So, Pietro, please, can you introduce yourself shortly?
Hi to everyone, nice to meet you, and hope that this workshop will be fine. I'm Pietro Adorni. I'm originally from Genoa, in the north of Italy, Liguria, but I'm studying in Milan at Niccolò. And I'm studying public policy and will focus on the evaluation and the technique to the prediction of the repression of the public policy. And I'm involved in a different movement and organization as Friends for Future in my local city, and in other European organizations involved spreading European values and spreading active citizenship in the young people with or Europe Direct or with the representative office of the European Parliament and European Commission.
Thank you very much, Pietro. So, with regard to this, this whole event actually is taking place in the framework of the conference on the future of Europe. And we want also to come out with this, with results and with suggestions from you, what can be done and what wishes you have for the future of Europe, and what Europe can do or the EU can do to foster and promote climate protection and really bring it on, let's say. And so my first question is to Niccolò, because he's in a very specific field that he's dealing with. You said you're in the rights of nature, let's say. What are the rights of nature, and how can they be implemented in the EU context?
Well, as I said before, the rights of nature are a legal jurisprudence. So basically, it will be a way to see law. If we conceive law as the rules of the game of our social life, then we can identify some perspectives in it, which of course are the product of our way of living the society. And the rights of nature is a sort of provocation and a sort of way to go through over these stereotypes that have been created in the course of history inside the context of law, which we believe are in a sort of way anthropocentric. So anthropocentric means that they conceive man as the center of the subject, while the rights of nature indeed are a more ecocentric point of view of law. So we think that humans should be seen in the context of nature, should be seen as members, as part intrinsically of nature, rather than an entity which is outside of it. And so in this new narrative, which is legal but can be applied to many other contexts, of course there is a bigger interest in protecting and preserving nature, because in that way we would also be preserving our species, ourselves, the future of us, and the future of our future generations. Mm-hmm. So this is in short what the rights of nature are. Of course, I don't want to dive too much into it, but if you are interested, there are so many publications about the topic, both in the legal field, but also in the field of arts, for example. There are many artists which try to promote this idea, this narrative. It is a narrative that also tends to preserve the rights of indigenous people and to, in a way, incorporate the indigenous knowledge into the mainstream traditional law, so that no one is left behind, as it's being said. And apart of this, I think that your second question, how could it be implemented in the EU context, is a very interesting and complicated question, because the EU legal framework is a framework very well designed in a way that it's quite complex to modify, and it tends to incorporate and delve into cross-cutting issues. So it is not something which is in evolution, but it's something which is very much consolidated. The rights of nature are a field which is emerging since since the 70s, when was written a book about Christopher Stone, Should Trees Have Standing, and that's which I suggest everyone to read, because it's very interesting. And at that point, there was the beginning of this international movement. So in this book, Should Trees Have Standing, Christopher Stone hypothesized the possibility to grant legal personhood to nature, to the natural elements, to the natural living systems, such as trees or rivers. And indeed, rivers is the field which has gained more attention and practical applications of these ideas. So, for example, we have the Wanganui River in New Zealand, which has been granted legal personhood. Also the Gange in India, Yamuna, are the two rivers which are currently possibly defendable into a court. And that's why I was saying before about the indigenous people relevance in this context, because many times indigenous peoples are those that live in these places, know those places, believe that those places are sacred to their culture, and therefore are those who are more suitable for defending them. And getting back to your question, I think this is one of the criticalities for which the rights of nature are difficult to be implemented into the EU system, of legal system, because if I'm not wrong, the only indigenous community present in Europe is the Sami community in Finland and Sweden and parts of Norway. So in fact, they are, from what I know, very much interested in the topic, and also at the academic level, many people in Finland and Sweden are studying the implications that this philosophy, legal philosophy, could have on their territories. And well, I would say that the rigidity of the EU legal system is, anyways, the biggest problem that the rights of nature would face in the future years for establishing as a new paradigm in the legal system.
Okay, but I think that won't stop you from trying, right? But you'll tell us more about that in how you do actions. A sort of legal action is something that Pietro also tried to do at the university. Maybe you can tell us about your example. It's quite practical, an activity that you implemented, but it involves legal action in a way. Pietro?
Yes, when I was in my first, in my bachelor at the University of Genoa, I was representative of the students in the board of administration, and thanks to cooperation with some realities as the Fridays for Future movement of Liguria, we have have reached, and what it means, this letter, this kind of letter, it was like a way to engage them. Our institution to be active and to cooperate with the other realities and the organization to fight climate change in a concrete way. So thanks to this network, also some goal of the Agenda 2030 were achieved as a sustainable mobility that the university has improved thanks to the installation of the park for the bike or the park to recharge the e-bike or e-scooter, and also to the installation of I don't know to say, like the a way to irrigate water to have microfiltered water to all of the students, and to some activities that have also implemented the research and the development of some new techniques by the university that was a really example of how students that are not maybe not ever, especially in Italy, taken into consideration by the politics and by who have the power to decide the future and to our future. So it was a sign of how students were able and can make the difference in really small realities, but to have a real impact on the at national level. So to act at local level, to have an effect at national level, and to be active and to be proud of our work.
Thank you very much. We talked about the whole day today. We talked a lot about the role of youth and the possibilities the youth has. And thank you for bringing this example. Maybe, Niccolò, you can also tell me about some activities that you, now that you've given your background, let's say, the theoretical background, what would be some activities that you did, and why is the role of the youth so important here?
Yeah. Well, actually, the main example that I can bring here today is about an activity that we actually haven't delivered. We are not actually delivering in Europe, because our association works is an international association, so we tend to work wherever it's possible for us to intervene for the cause of the rights of nature. We are now supporting the Quechua community in Ecuador, which is an indigenous community.
And you brought a picture here.
Yeah.
It's a picture of a river.
Of the
Maybe we
river,
can see it.
which is the only river which has preserved its pristiness in Ecuador, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, it's a beautiful river. Not, this is
One of
not-
the last images. Mhm.
But anyways, the problem there, yes, it's correct.
Thank you very much.
The problem there is that a company is building a hydroelectric dam, and this, of course, would have very severe repercussions on the flora and fauna of the river, and also on the life of the people which live there and believe that this river has some very good characteristics for their health. So they are basically trying to stop the construction of this dam, and we are supporting this activity by providing some legal assistance for drafting a manifesto in which they are basically demanding that the hydroelectric dam stops to be built. At the moment, if I'm not wrong, the project has been blocked. The case is at the Constitutional Court level. Ecuador, by the way, is a very unique country for the rights of nature, because in 2008, it has been the first country in the world to incorporate rights of nature into its constitution, which is very, very important for the purposes of cases like this one of the Rio Piatua, because in that case, in substance, the Constitutional Court may be activated for preserving the rights of rivers or any other natural element.
So what you do is you provide legal support?
Yeah, exactly.
And who do you work with in the countries then?
We are basically working with the indigenous community, which lives there. I think that at the moment they are just presenting the manifesto. They are doing some sort of activity. So basically that's what we are trying to do. I mean, we are just providing the support to them for writing their demands, and we just provide our knowledge in the field, because we, of course, believe, as they do, that rights of nature have this power to stop activities of this kind, which are possibly undermining their possibility to live in an area which has always been very clean and pristine. And the hydroelectric dam will put in severe risk also some endemic species of fish, which inevitably will be blocked in their natural way.
Is there an alternate solution to this problem, or to the wish to build a dam someplace else maybe, or?
It is quite complicated, because you find on one hand a population of people which have not substantial power. I mean, they are living traditionally in the territory, and they don't have that sort of lobbying influence which is needed for finding a compromise, for negotiating something. On the other hand, we have a company, a power, which of course is probably not going to stop acting in the territory, because there are, of course, economic interests in the area. So I think that at the moment it's quite complicated to find a solution among the two parties. I'm not working directly on this, but that's what I suppose. And I think that the only way that we could find some sort of compromise is through law. So through incorporating, validating some sources, which, by the way, would also create a legal precedent for the case of Ecuador and in general for the cause of the rights of nature. Because as I was saying before, the Rio Whanganui River in New Zealand, once it has been granted legal personality in 2017, has been put in the hands, in a way, of an ombudsman, so legal representative, which in case could move to the court in case someone commits an ecocide or any other violation of the territory. And that person is an indigenous person, so there are, of course, also environmental NGOs involved in the field, providing any sort of support, as we do. And I think this is something that may have enormous implications also in the future, also for what has been called the global commons. So more broadly, not about a river we are talking, but we are talking about the atmosphere itself. We are talking about the poles, the fluvial forests, and all those parts which are necessary for human life and for the prosecution of the life itself, not only ours.
Maybe we can come back to how you succeed in this, or whether you think you have the power, let's say.
Yeah.
But we can have a look at what you talked about, influence and power and positions of power and influence. Pietro also tried to influence or to exert influence and managed in his actions with a player, let's say, who was less, where you needed real action to do this, and that was the City Council of Genoa. Maybe you can tell us more about that example, Pietro?
Oh, yeah, sure. So thanks for that. So I think that I will present an example of activity that I think that each of the participants at this workshop can can replicate in their own city. And I think that if they want, I can give them some advices. And so this is so now I'm talking about this, and the example of this activity is like the creation of a commission inside the City Council of Genoa, the city, my world city, to evaluate and monitor the achievement of the municipality of Genoa of the sustainable development goals of the Agenda 2030. So I think that this was another really important goal carried out by some different environmental and non-environmental movement at local and national level. And this was really important because this has made possible to brought to light a very important and structural problem. And this was possible also thanks to the cooperation of the Council of Genoa. And the aim was not only to evaluate, so to monitor the achievement of each of the Sustainable Development Goals, but was also a very important opportunity to have a direct dialogue with who has the power to decide, and so with the decision makers. And I think that this was also an opportunity not only to be active and so to have the power in our action, but was also an opportunity to bring more opportunity to know in which way a council acts, in which way a council decides what to do, and way to have the doctor to influence and to achieve some goals. So I think that this is an example of how each of us can have a difference. Make a difference.
Thank you, Pietro. We lost you there just for a short while. Maybe it's just us. I hope others can see and hear you well. So you said it's, but we can hear you fine. Thank you. This is an example where also Fridays for Future influenced a decision of the local council. Is it something that will be a good practice example that will be also brought to other cities, let's say? Do you have knowledge of that?
Yes, I think that this is like a way to influence the decision makers, and so the question was like which other activity, which other activity and things can be carried out by the people, or in which way you have carried out this one? Because I've not heard you very well.
Thank you. And what would you say are the implications of your actions in Europe, let's say? You are an European, actually, organization, and you have members all over Europe, but you also work internationally. So what are your implications, the implications of your work in Europe here, or for the European climate protection, let's say?
Yeah, well, I would say that at the moment it will be quite difficult to find some concrete actions that we are influencing, because, to be honest, we are an organization which has been established not so long ago. But I would say that in general, organizations which operate in the environmental field and in climate protection especially have a huge power, a huge possibility to influence and in a way convince young people, in general the civil society, to take action. Because Europe has something which is quite unique under an environmental law point of view, which is, for example, the Aarhus Convention on access on information, public participation and access to court, which gives a huge tool to the civil society to be part of the processes which regard environmental law, environmental protection in whole Europe. That's something which, of course, comes from international law, so that's something that has a top-down approach, but at the same time enhances a lot what I think it's crucial, and that's also a motivation for me to keep on fighting for causes, which is the importance of having an engaged civil society, having a bottom-up approach, so having people pushing, asking their officials, their governments to take some action, and they can do it both in the streets, and that's why activism is important, because you provide people motivations and reasons and facts for taking action in the streets or in their local communities, wherever it is, but at the same time people can also engage directly by asking questions. In fact, I invite all of you, from wherever you are in Europe, to, if you are concerned about something regarding the environment of your city, of your region or your country, to send an email to your representatives, to your politicians, at the national, at the EU level. Just ask questions, because they have the obligation to reply to the public. You see, and that's something very powerful, because this way you interrupt the disconnection between people and governments and the powers, you know? That's something that many of us in many fields perceive to be something that blocks our way, in a sense. But then, as Europeans, we have this useful tool in environmental democracy that only needs to be used. So we only need people to know that and to convince them that it's worth. Because I feel, in the environmental field, but not only, especially in this period, a huge distrust among institutions of any kind. So mainly governments, of course, all over Europe. People believe that, especially youth, that governments are ineffective, they are corrupt, it's not worth to fight for something because it's a lost cause.
Is that an experience especially from, let's say, your region, or would you say is it Europe-wide or even international sentiment?
I would say that the facts are quite clear to me in a way. Of course, I come from Italy, so I have this perspective, which is the one from my country. And there I see it very clearly that there is a huge distrust. I don't want to go into politics, but there's just one data which is astonishing to me. 1 month ago, we voted for the administrative elections, and so we voted for the councils of Rome and Milan, the biggest cities in Italy, and only 40% of all voters went to vote. So the mayor of Rome was elected with 250,000 votes out of, I think, 3 million people living in the city, which is it's a fact. I mean, people are giving a signal by not voting because they say, we don't trust you anymore. But these has huge repercussions, to be back to the subject, to the environment, because then you give the possibility to those in charge to do however they like, because they just say, yeah, but they don't really care. We have the power. There is no one checking us, no?
So raising awareness, you said even earlier, is one of your commitments also.
Absolutely.
What else do you do, or do you have some activities maybe you can share how you try to raise awareness? And does any one of your members do it in their country, or do you connect throughout Europe?
Well, what we basically try to do is to connect people around the world. So, for example, now we are organizing a summit, which is about to start in a couple of days, the 25th. The aim of the summit is to connect people from all around the world and provide them some knowledge on the topic of oceans, and the high seas in particular. So we designed 4 different tracks for the biodiversity of oceans, for the high seas, for climate, and for the national island states, so that people, on one hand, have the scientific knowledge that can use in order to cross-pollinate people around them, but at the same time, we also want to provide them the possibility to launch their campaigns in order to spread even more awareness. So that will be education and awareness. And we aim to provide them the tools in order to take action themselves. Because we think that, of course, we can do something as an environmental NGO, but then the power is in the hands of the people. And
Self-help for self-help.
correct, exactly.
And talking about raising awareness, we also had an example from Pietro and another activity that he was also the co-founder of. Are you still with us, Pietro?
Yes, I'm with you. Yes, sure. I'm co-founder of another pan-European youth organization that is called 1 Hour for Europe, and it's like an organization born thanks to the cooperation with the People's European Parliament, which is in offices in some different European member states. So member states, it's obviously that they are European, this organization has the aim to not only spread the European values and spread active citizenship around and among young European citizens, but the main aim is to connect different realities that already carry out the same activities, but without talking about the aim, talking about activities, without a cooperation. So what we would like to do is to strengthen this cooperation and to connect this network of European association, the realities all around from Europe, and to connect with the institution, so with the EU institution, with the European European Direct Center, but also with the representation of the European Parliament, and not only with all of the agencies. And so this is like another way to be active also from our houses, because we were born during the together, but not together. So during this time of voting campaign promoted by the European Parliament, now we are active during the Together That We campaign, and so many of us that came from different European member states, so from Cyprus to Portugal, from Limassol to Glasgow, so from a lot of cities, and most of us, so I've never met from in person a lot of them, and we were strengthened, and our strength came also from very strong values and very strong belonging, sense of belonging in the European Union. And so I think that this strength and this connection is also very important in a cooperation with the aim, with the same aim, and so with the aim to fight climate change and to cooperate to to spread activities in the same direction. So this is the organization I was part of. And I think that maybe this can be an advice for many participants at this workshop to be active and to be part of maybe my organization.
Thank you very much. What you just said brought a lot of questions, actually, but I just wanted to check if we have some questions in the chat, maybe. But feel free for everyone in our room participating, feel free to ask questions or comments. Pietro and Niccolò would be happy, I think, to answer any questions or comments you have. Just get into discussion with us. Talk about your own activism, about examples of good practice. Now that you said young people can really do a lot, as we have seen on your example and on yours as well, but earlier today in the discussions we heard that it can be really tiring, that it can be also difficult for young people to maintain, let's say, this energy and the wish. Do you also get tired? I mean, you said you just newly founded, but still, have you seen it with other maybe members, or have you seen what it's like when you push and when you work for climate protection and not many things happen, or as you said, you don't maybe have a lot of hope to get inside the EU legal system?
Well, I think that it is part of youth to be utopian, to dream big, and so we have to do our part. I mean, adults have to rule the country, have to rule the world, and we have to make them feeling that there are alternatives. That's what has always been, I mean, in our societies. So some people, of course, lose hope. They get tired. That's normal. I wouldn't say that's part of our action, how ambitious it is. I would say it's more of natural in human beings. Actually, what's even more relevant in this field, in the field of environmental activism, is people having breakouts, on the other hand. So they tend to care too much as they go into mental illness. Because on one hand, you have the, how can you say, no feedback from what you're doing, because that's something which takes a lot of time, you know, a lot of energy. And on the other hand, you feel the pressure that something has to be done now. It's not, as was said also during the last COP, the time for words is finished. It's time for solutions, for actions, you know. But then these actions are not taken, and people get frustrated for this, because many people spend part of their lives in working for these problems. So actually, I never got tired of doing this, even if I'm just a newbie, so I just started. But I think that the cause is greater, so it's worth to fight. Mm-hmm. And I think that people should start fighting more and getting more and more information, especially spread those informations with your networks. Of course, you don't have to just talk about this every day, but when there is the chance, the occasion, maybe just discuss about the state of your neighborhood or your local areas, how they are doing, what are governments doing about it, and what can you do for improving the conditions of the rivers and the lakes which are around you. I think that would be something very powerful. And the more we are, the better results we find, and the less people will get burnouts, you know.
And that's a good question also for our audience. What can you do? And maybe there are some answers, but I'm sorry, Yasmin, I just can't read this. Is there a question that you can share with us? Okay, no question yet, but feel free again to ask or tell us what you are doing to protect the world around you. And Pietro, how about you? You said that it's easier now, or as I understood, with the pandemic, actually, it's because everything is online, we're kind of better connected. There are more possibilities. I talked about this to Niccolò earlier. Would you share that opinion, Pietro? Is it easier to connect cross-regionally now that we have all those possibilities?
Yes, yes. So I think that more than in the past, in the previous era, so in the before pandemic era, it is more easier. So it is easier to cooperate and to connect with more people. So now I'm participating at this workshop from Genoa, from my home. So in a previous, in a previous activity and workshop, maybe I couldn't participate. However, now I'm a little bit tired. However, I think connecting with the topic, so with your answer. So if the volunteer maybe can be tired, and so how can we go over this tiring of volunteers, and so to spread also this information and to be ever active. I think that a way that we are trying to, an example, a project that we are trying to carry out is to spreading this information, so to making these activities throughout the art. So using the art like a way to communicate in a more visible, in an easier way, your values, your activities, and so now I will present an activity that it's called Paint You. So it will be an hashtag, and this will be a way to organize activity, park things like umbrellas or park bench, and to paint our cities of youth-like colors. And this would be a way to attract more people and to engage more young people, but not only young people, in new activities, and to spread the sense of belonging in the European Union, and in the same way to realize and to restructurate, I don't know the specific way of saying, our values. So, for example, we can go in a place that it's not maybe the best place in our cities or in our neighborhood, and we can regenerate it, for example, with a restyling project, and also after this restyling step to color it, so to restyle it with the youth-like colors, so with umbrellas or with a project of street art, or with or planting trees, and so this will be a way to using so to cooperate and to reach the same with the same project two different ways. So to spread your values and to restyle the places, and to have a best clean life, more clean life.
Thank you very much. The way I see it, you're talking about, in a way, non-formal education. And something I also found on your organization's website is the term environmental literacy, which is also part of education. Do you feel that all around Europe, the education regarding environment is on the same level, or is there something to be done? Is there something that we can do, or your organization can or would do, to raise it?
Yeah, I think that there are some differences among countries, but also around generations. So I perceive that now young people have more consciousness of the risks, the threats, and the solutions which may be taken with regard to the protection of nature, while older people have a little bit of less consciousness. Of course, I don't want to generalize, but that's the perspective that we get by reading newspapers, by seeing all these movements which are fighting for nature. I would say overall that Europe is not doing that bad under the point of view of environmental awareness, but I think that globally we really need to push a lot on eco-literacy, which will be environmental knowledge and education about all the problems that our...
What would that word or would that term entail? What would be in it? Would the rights of nature should be part of environmental literacy?
Well, that's a dream that, of course, I do have. I think that, first of all, it's needed that people know what's going on, especially how our consumeristic tendencies are influencing the climate. And then, maybe once more and more people are aware of this, maybe they will voluntarily understand and decide to join the cause of the rights of nature. That's something that, of course, you cannot force people to do. It's not actually important to have the name rights of nature on something. The important is the outcome. If we reach the outcome in any other way, that's still important. I mean, another thing that sometimes I find in environmental NGOs in general is that sometimes it's a little bit evanescent what they tend to do. So they care more about the etiquettes than concrete action. And especially there is a little bit of not much collaboration among them for the same cause, because there is a little bit of thesaurization, you know, they close a little bit, they make walls around. But I think that what's important is that, first of all, people get to know, get the means, at least they have the means to know what's going on with our lifestyle. And I think that now with internet, it's very much easier to get those kind of information. And I think that's another reason why young people are today having more consciousness about this than older generations. Along with, of course, misinformation and all that problems with social media, which are something, because, of course, our choices determine, and that's science, that's not an opinion, but that determines the path that we are taking. Everything that we buy determines where we are going as a species, as an individual choice. If we decide to buy a jacket and we paid €1 for that, then there must be some hidden costs, which are not costs related to the material itself, but they may be related to bad habits, bad practices that corporations do with regards to the environment, but not only, also to pay gaps, to gender issues, slavery, a lot of problems that go on. And so, in a way, I know that also Pietro is very much involved in sustainability. I think that this word sustainability, something being sustainable, enshrines many problems that's trying to solve, which are, of course, the three dimensions of sustainable development: the environmental, the social, the economic. If we adopt the decision, if we have the possibility to buy, for example, sustainable clothes, then we go to impact on three different levels, not only the environmental one, but also the other two. Because in the long run, that will be feasible for us to respect and to conserve as a habit, while if we keep on collecting clothes and put them in somewhere in South America where there are huge garbage patches of clothes, then at a certain point this won't be feasible with human life, you know.
Do you think, or also maybe Pietro, if you have a knowledge of that people know about this problem enough, or certain, let's say, certain spheres or certain groups of people maybe have less knowledge, and why is that, and what can you do to...
I think, if I may, Pietro, I think a very huge problem is the fact that people in university students or young professionals, people who have a knowledge of this, tend to live in a sort of bubble. So they tend to confront only with other people who know this, and to give for granted that the rest of the world is aware. But I think that people who know have a even bigger responsibility to share this information with others. Otherwise, they will keep on being the only ones knowing that, and there will be no possibility for having the change they are planning, discussing, and expecting from people if they don't discuss with others. I think that communication, dialogue is key in any sector. And I think the reason why many people don't know about this is that there is a huge gap between educated people and less educated people at all levels. At the national level, at the local level, internationally. There are lots of countries which don't even share their best practices because they are afraid of intellectual property or anything else. We see it for the vaccine, you know, for example, some countries are blocking the possibility for developing countries to produce their own vaccines. And these, of course, I don't want to talk about these political implications, but in the reasonment of communication and dialogue is a huge block which prevents equality in knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Pietro, any comments? Yes? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yes. So maybe I have maybe a little extreme opinion on this way, but I think not only there are people that know about these things live like in a bubble, like the new bubble that all of us, in many occasions, in many situations said. But I think that the majority of the people don't perceive the problem, the climate issues, as something that is closely to them, and so they doesn't concern that this is a problem that will have an effect on their own life, on their own lives in the future. So I think that the problem is not only to spread education, that is very important. So it's a very problem. So all of us know that depending on the different member states, there are different levels of education in on specific issues, like the climate issues is a problem that the northern member states perceive more closely than the other. But this is maybe a strange thing, because so are the southern member states that instead of have a very and that have a more impact on all the climate change. So we can thinking about the inundation or about the very strange weather. So I think that it's not only a problem of education, but also a problem on the way of the people perceive these issues. So I think that all of us can do more, because we have to change the mind and the perception of all of the population before.
And from your connection, just not to forget, from your connections throughout Europe, Pietro, would you say that this is a problem that is equally divided among the countries in Europe?
So I think that this is the problem that, yes, so it's not, so it's equal divided, because another example was like the election, so the affluences of the people that vote. We can thinking about the 19% of the election, so of the young affluences to the EU election of 2014, or to the 40% of affluence of the young people to the election of the 2019. So this is an example of the I don't know, say, of the non-interest of you people, of people in general, especially in the young people, in the policies, in the thing that carry out around us. So maybe, I don't know if anyone has another opinion, but maybe this is I'm a little bit negative about this.
Don't be. I interrupted you earlier.
No problem. No, I just wanted to comment on what Pietro said about the correct difficulty of people to even perceive the climate crisis. I think that's something enshrined in our mind. That's something cognitive, that problem that humans have concretely into their way of seeing the world. And I remember I saw a study conducted in New York, if I'm not wrong, in which these people were basically putting X-rays around the city they were not really X-rays. They were rays which were perceiving the CO2 produced. And so visually, you could see that all cars were producing CO2, all heating systems were doing the same, and you were seeing the whole city completely surrounded by CO2.
Visible became visible.
Exactly. And what they proposed, which is something very extreme, but in a way would make sense, is to colorate CO2 so that we see it. And by seeing it, for example, here in Stuttgart, we will go around and everything will be completely black. And so we would have an incentive to remove CO2 because we will see it. The problem is that we are not seeing it. Therefore, not only for CO2, but for everything else, for global warming, for the sea rise level, we don't have a concrete cognitive approach to the problem, and we don't just take action for that because that's something which doesn't affect us every day. But that's like the paradox of the frog which stays in the pot, and the pot is boiling, but since it's gradual, they don't really how do you say? They don't really perceive that, and so they just die boiled, you know.
But if everything were black around us, I think that would be quite frightening. So,
therefore, that's why we would have even more incentive to that. Of course, it's an exaggeration, but still, we are living around that anyways, if we see it or not. But maybe if everything was black,
so we're
we will take
blessed, or some people are blessed in their ignorance, right?
What?
Some people are blessed in their ignorance, not knowing what is around them.
That's also a sort of damnation.
Makes it easier for them to live, but...
Yeah, that's a damnation because we don't realize what's going on.
There are some comments or questions, but I just... Yes, thank you so much, Yasmin.
Hello. Hello, yeah, it's working perfect. So we have got 2 comments, and I think I'm going to read them, and then you can react. It's from Bruno Wipfler, who is in our audience. I believe that in many places in Europe, but also in the rest of the world, many good plans and activities have been worked out, which, if they are implemented in more and more places, could help to prevent the climate catastrophe. I think we, and also politics, should work for the spread of these ideas and plans with a lot more force and energy. That's one. And the second, but I think we also need conferences where we connect these ideas with the actual goal, to show everyone how they help and that they are worth working on. This could help to make actors and change makers more effective in tackling the actual problems that prevent an appropriate response to the climate crisis up until now.
Thank you so much, Yasmin, for being my eyes. It's just too small for me here. Any comments on the comment we just heard? Which is why we're actually here, to connect and to hear good practice examples. And we've had some very interesting brought from Pietro and his actions, or the way his actions actually changed or amounted to something. And your very original, which I feel, approach of your organization. Do you wish to comment on that, either of you? I think Pietro is frozen again.
Okay. Well, I see he's moving.
Go ahead, yes.
Okay,
Go
okay,
ahead,
okay,
Niccolò.
thank you. No, about the second comment, I think both of them are made by the same person, but I think it's Bruno, I cannot read the name. Anyways, if he refers to conferences like these, I think I completely agree with him in the sense that these conferences, these occasions give the possibility to young people, to everyone, to share their ideas from wherever they are in Europe, in the world. And of course, we can have different perspectives. So, for instance, once I went to Lapland, I studied there for a while, and I had the possibility to talk with some indigenous peoples there, and they were telling me that they were feeling climate change by the softness of snow, because they have always been
Surrounded by snow.
Surrounded by snow, and they have so many words for saying snow, so they know it very well. And they could perceive that, so that's something that they have a feedback of. And if I didn't met that person, I would have never known. Again, if we meet, if we activate our possibilities and interact with others, there is always something that we don't know yet, and that it's important to know, because maybe once this will be helpful in our life, in our action. And that's why I also was saying before that we have to disseminate more and more what we know about the environment, so that people are aware, and maybe once we will be able all together to do something concretely. So I think that, again, connection, dialogue is crucial. While if it was referring more to the conferences like COPs, so all these international meetings, then I also think it's quite important that states communicate. The problem with states is that it takes simply too much. It's too long for them to have a sort of response to the inputs which come from the outside. And we see it, I mean, in the last 50 years, of course, a lot has been done. We were talking about it with the other speakers before, but still, in concrete, a lot of words have been said. And that's why we don't have to wait for them. We have to push them, of course, but on the other hand, we have to do it on our own as a civil society, so that at a certain point, both tracks will meet, and hopefully we will reach the targets that we must reach.
And I think we've seen also from the discussions earlier here that a lot has also been done, and that especially youth organizations can push things forward and can get their ideas implemented in policies. Pietro, any comments from you?
Yeah, so I agree with Niccolò with the fact that maybe there could be a lot of policies adopted by the member states, by the governments, but what it really means, it's not only what they said at this big event like the COP, so we cannot only expect that the decision that came from the COP will be the decision that and the policies that will be adopted. But we have to push from our civil society commitment, with our civil society commitment and with our organization, these institutions to carry activities and carry policies that will make the difference. So the activity of lobbying that maybe from different member states can have a positive or negative meaning. I think that is really important things, and what we can do to reach a real difference with our actions. So I agree with Niccolò with his speech.
And with a comment, I believe. Thank you so much. We're closing, we're coming close to the end of our discussion, and thinking again in the context of the Conference on the Future of Europe, I would like to invite you, our participants, and also my guests, to give any maybe final words or recommendations, concrete recommendations that we could upload to the platform, Future EU, where you could, well, the recommendations that we bring will also find their way into policies, and these need to be respected then. So do you maybe have, again, an invitation to our participants, but also to you for a concrete recommendation maybe?
Yeah. What I would expect from the EU institutions, from the Commission and all the other institutions, will be to communicate more effectively and to a wider range of people that they have the possibility to influence the decision-making process of the Europe itself. I think the COFI, the Conference for the Future of Europe, is a wonderful chance for doing that. It is almost necessary to do it now because it's complicated. It's hardly conceivable that we will have other chances as known for doing that. That, as before I was saying, there is like the Aarhus Convention, which is a piece of international law, but at the same time, despite the rest of many of international treaties, it's very concrete because it gives people the possibility to enter concretely, effectively into the decision-making process. people have to be heard by those who want to do some sort of environmental intervention in the area. But as long as they don't know that, they will never apply for that. And they will never let their rights value into a court. And so I think that if Europe wants to prove herself and its citizens to be democratic as it is, as it has always been in a way, it should also be more transparent and facilitate knowledge among their citizens about their rights in the environmental field.
Okay, so more communication, more approach from Europe directly to people. This is a good recommendation. Yeah. And any closing words from you, Pietro?
Yes, so I would like to say that maybe not all of the participants know that the panelists, so the citizens elected by the European institution to be part of the conference, really read that all of us contribute to the platform. So I think that all of us have to write, to network, to be active, and to active all of other people to not only engage the platform, but to engage the proposal that you have made, that you have write, because this is how you make the difference. So if your proposal has a lot of reactions, a lot of comments, this is with probably of the 100% will be a proposal that will be read by the Congress and by the European Parliament. So European Parliament member of the European Parliament, sorry. So I think that the only things that all of us can do is to think, write, activate the other, and network. So this is how we can be part of the conference, also from our houses and our home.
Thank you so much. And I believe one more last comment came in, and I would like to ask Yasmin.
Yeah, no problem. So I make it short. Bruno's point is that he's still missing a clear vision and strategy, and he's wanting more work to prevent the climate crisis. So he wants to bring conferences to a new level, where it's not only exchange, but where there are also strategies are being found and followed. And his final approach is to find more concrete plans.
I agree completely. I think we couldn't agree more. And I think this is what we all hope from the Conference on the Future of Europe, and what we will, in a way, demand. I mean, this is what we can demand and what we can contribute to the platform, and see it through, if it's not conveyed in this way, to really demand a strategy to be developed coming out from all the propositions. So I would like to thank you all participating. Thank you to Pietro for connecting with us, and thank you, Niccolò, for coming here.
Thank you so much.
It's been great talking to you, and thanks and goodbye.